Hello, friends. Ken Graves here with GodSword. Monday, September 30, the year 2024. Open before us is the fourth and final chapter of Jonah. Jonah, chapter 4, verse 1. The last thing we read, it was the 10th verse of chapter 3 that said, Then God saw their works, the Ninevites, that they turned from their evil way. So God relented concerning the evil which he had spoken he would bring upon them. He did not bring it upon them. Well, verse 1 of chapter 4 says, But this was a great evil to Jonah, and he became angry. This was a great evil to Jonah. Jonah will make himself the judge of God. He's not the only one who's ever done that. And perhaps you have. Many people do anymore. There is in modern culture a serious lack of fear of God, a serious lack of reverence for God and his might. And I think people are frequently bolder than they ought to be in speaking out against God. But you're not alone. I am amazed at God's grace and how he puts up with this, but he does. And he did with Jonah. But Jonah, and he prayed to Yahweh and said, Oh, Yahweh, was not this my word to myself while I was still in my own land? Therefore I went ahead to flee to Tarshish, for I knew that you are a gracious and compassionate God, slow to anger and abundant in loving kindness, when it relents concerning evil. So now, O Yahweh, please take my life from me, for death is better to me than life. Now, we don't want to be too hard on Jonah. The Assyrians have committed great evil against him and his people, Israel. They are, in a sense, the Nazis of the day, right? They were brutal. Jonah knows that God is, in fact, gracious because God reveals that about himself and revealed it in the law. He revealed it to Moses, stating his name, that he is gracious, full of compassion, slow to anger. And Jonah said, I know that's where you wanted me to go and prophesy against these citizens of Nineveh. The reason why God would give a warning is because he is merciful. And with a warning, there's a chance that they might heed the warning. And sure enough, they did. Jonah's like, just kill me. Take my life from me. For death is better to me than life. Yahweh said, do you have good reason to be angry? Do you have good reason? In other words, Jonah, is this reasonable? Your anger against God, is it reasonable? Now, I believe God would ask you likewise, you who have been or are or who still struggle with some degree of resentment against God, is it really reasonable? I mean, you got to think it through. Is it truly reasonable? Of course, Jonah, he doesn't answer. Verse 5, and Jonah went out from the city and sat east of the city. And there he made a booth for himself and sat under it in the shade until he could see what would happen in the city. So Yahweh, God, appointed a plant, and it came up over Jonah to be a shade over his head to deliver him from his miserable evil. And Jonah was extremely glad about the plant. Extremely glad. A plant, a vine, fast-growing, presumably, large leaf, And it went to work weaving over Jonah's little booth, his little lean-to hut. Jonah was very glad. He goes from very mad to very glad about this. And then, extremely glad. That's a strong word. Verse 7, but God appointed a worm at the breaking of dawn the next day, and it struck the plant and it dried up. God prepared a storm. God prepared a sea monster. God moved upon that monster to vomit up Jonah. Now, God sent a worm. The little worm seems to have solicited from Jonah as much emotion as the great sea monster did. Then it happened that as the sun rose up, God appointed a scorching east wind. God appointed it. He's in charge. He is the weatherman. Sun struck down on Jonah's head, so that he became faint and asked with all his soul to die, and said, death is better to me than life. Now, I'm not sure how much Jonah actually knows about death. I don't know that he, as most of the Old Testament prophets and saints, didn't have that much information about heaven. And I don't know what he knows, but I know he wants his life to end. He is so angry that just kill me. And God said to Jonah, do you have a good reason to be angry about the plant? This is God saying, is it reasonable for you to be angry at me about a plant? And he said, I have good reason to be angry, even to death. And Yahweh said, you had pity on the plant, which you did not work, and which you did not cause to grow, which came to be overnight and perished overnight. So, should I not have pity on Nineveh, the great city, in which there are more than 120,000 persons who do not know the difference between their right hand and their left, as well as many animals? That statement implies from God that animals are more important than plants. You're angry about a plant. Should not I have been concerned about people of Nineveh? More than 120,000 of them. That they're so young, they don't even know right hand from left hand yet. That's young. Should not I? You're angry about a plant, God says. Should not I care for people? Animals, even more important than a plant. God cares about the animals. I just thought before it got totally dark, I would show you the trusses. They have arrived as the sun sets. We have no reason for anger against God. You may think you have a case, but the truth is you don't. No one does. God has every reason to be angry with us, and yet he is merciful. He's kind, patient. He's put up with a lot from our kind. So maybe you can consider cutting God a little slack. He's not running the universe your way. And recognize we're the ones that need to humble ourselves before him. We are the ones who have done wrong. God is fair. What is reasonable? New Testament addresses that. What is truly reasonable? Our reasonable service is that we would present our bodies a living sacrifice, Romans 12:1. That's reasonable. And by the way, that's given to us after 11 chapters of Romans, stating all that God has done for us, who he is, all that he's done for us through Christ. We have reasons. It's our reasonable service to surrender our life to him, even our bodies, a living sacrifice. Where's your study for today? If I can answer a question, feel free. I'll try to. I'm behind, but I appreciate when you do right. Ken Graves at ccbangor.org. All right, grace and peace to you tomorrow. We'll continue this journey.